Good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you with the part 2 recap of Metamorphosis. Before I begin, I just want to go over a couple things. The directions for the assignment for the study guide questions were as follows. Answer the comprehensive questions for Metamorphosis with an explanation and a quote from the novella to support your answer. Work may be done in notebooks or directly into this document. If you did not include quotes for the second part, then redo it, and you shouldn't have to resubmit it. It'll just, Google Docs will just update it. Okay. Part 3 is going to be due on Monday. So again, make sure you have the quotes in each. Why the quotes? Well, your essay next week, your final essay for Metamorphosis, if you do the quotes, you already have them done. And there you go. And it also shows that you read the story. So then make sure that you do. All right, let's go to part 2. So if you read, you know what apples have to do with the end of part 2. All right, let's take a look at it page by page. All right, so this is about a transformation. Gregor's changing, the tone of the house is changing, people are changing that he lives with. So we left off with him accumulating another injury at the hands of his father when he shoved him through the door and he scraped up his side and he damaged one or a couple of his legs. So he has another problem now. So as he's lying there, he realizes that he's hungry. So what do you eat? Are you still a man or are you a crawling insect? Because you eat two different things and you eat differently. So he's probably in his early 20s, we could say. So just get an idea about how old he is. So his sister slides pretty much a bowl of cereal into his room, and he looks at it and he's like, that does not appeal to me anymore. So if previously you liked Reese's Puffs and now you're an insect, you don't like Reese's Puffs anymore. So what do? So he's lying there, and it says he felt a great pride that he had been able to provide such a life in a beautiful apartment like this for his parents and his sister. So he always thinks about his family, and he is curious as to what's going to happen if he can't work. Is he going to be able to provide for them? And his sister is caring, the first part of this chapter. Nobody bothers with him anymore because they don't know what's going on. So in the first part, they were banging on the door. When the manager was there, they wanted him to come out. Now, nobody wants to go in to see him. Nobody came to visit him. So there's this isolation that's starting. So his sister would come in and feed him, but he wouldn't want to embarrass her or frighten her, so he hides from her. He doesn't sleep in a bed anymore, so there's another transformation into becoming more of a creature than a human. So the first time she comes in, she sees him. She comes in unannounced, and it says she got such a shock that without being able to control herself, she slammed the door shut once again from the outside. However, as if she was sorry for her behavior, she immediately opened the door again, as if she was in the presence of a serious invalid or a total stranger. So she figures out, okay, he's not going to eat cereal anymore. So what does she do? What do insects eat? They eat garbage, decomposed things. It doesn't have teeth to be able to chew. She brought him to test his taste, an entire selection all spread out on an old newspaper. There were old half-rotten vegetables, bones from the evening meal covered with a white sauce which had almost solidified, some raisins and almonds, cheese which Gregor had declared inedible 2 days earlier, a slice of dry bread, and a slice of salted bread smeared with butter. And he eats all of it. Now, if we were in class, I actually take all of those things and I keep them in a Ziploc bag for a week, just so you get an idea of how nasty this stuff is and what it smells like, because that plays in a couple of pages. So the sister is caring and understanding, and, well, now that's going to change. So the two of them have this unspoken agreement. He's going to hide himself, and she's just going to kind of pretend he's not there while she takes care of him. She feeds him, and then she cleans up his mess, and they do it on the slide because she doesn't want to get anyone worried. And the two of them still have this tight relationship. And then it starts to get old, and she starts to change. So the servant girl leaves because she just can't deal with this anymore. So the poor mother and sister, they have to like clean their own house, and they have to make their own meals now. And then he hears the family talking. Now don't forget, he worked and none of them did. So he supported his family, and he was paying off his father's debt. That'd be like if his father or his parents owed the IRS 20 grand or 60 grand, and he was working to pay off their debt. He was working, not them. And then he hears something, and it said, from the time he stood up from the table, this is the father, pulled out of a small lockbox salvaged from his business, which had collapsed 5 years previously, some document or other, some notebook. And he doesn't know what's going on. Now they're trying to figure out how they're going to survive without the paycheck coming in from Gregor. So it turns out that there's some money that Gregor didn't know about that the father has on the side. Gregor was going to send his sister to college as a Christmas present. So he's lying there and he's thinking about what a waste he is that he can't help his family anymore. He's always thinking of them, even when they treat him like garbage. Gregor later earned so much money that he was in a position to bear the expenses of the entire family, costs which he in fact did bear. They had become quite accustomed to it, both the family and Gregor as well. They sit on their butt and he goes out to work, and it's fine, both parties. So then he hears the father talking some more about finances. And it says that when his business collapsed, that in spite of all the bad luck, a fortune, although a very small one, was available from the old times, which the interest, which had not been touched, had in the intervening time gradually allowed to increase a little. Furthermore, so they've got that cash option, and now they have another one. In addition to this, the money which Gregor had brought home every month, he had kept only a few florins for himself, had not been completely spent, and had grown into a small capital amount. And Gregor hears this, and he's like, oh, good, my family's got something to live on. Now, so they stashed away the money from the business. They stashed away money that Gregor brought home. And it didn't work. And he did. Okay. So he's thinking about his family. And the father, although his father was old, he was a healthy man who had not worked at all for 5 years. So he sat on his butt for 5 years while his kid went out to work. And his old mother, now perhaps maybe she's going to have to get a job, who suffered from asthma. So she's got all of these health problems. Maybe she's a hypochondriac. She is. Should his sister earn money? Listen to a spoiled little princess that she's been allowed to be. A girl who was still a 17-year-old child, whose earlier lifestyle had been so very delightful that it had consisted of dressing herself nicely, sleeping in late, helping around the house, taking part in a few modest enjoyments, and above all, playing the violin. So he's like, I hope my poor sister doesn't have to go out to work. Great. His eyesight starts to fail because, again, he's turning into an insect. So everything is starting to change in his body also. So he looks out the window in his room, and it's starting to become dimmer and more blurry. All right, the sister starts to change now. The mom is starting to become curious what's going on. So she still feeds him, the sister Greta, but what she does is she starts to be insensitive. So she runs, when she gets into his room, she runs over and opens the window and makes this exaggerated thing like she can't breathe in there because it smells so bad. So she embarrasses him. She's getting tired of taking care of him. He wasn't tired of taking care of the family, but now they're getting tired of taking care of him. She makes him feel ashamed. So he tries to hide himself, and she makes a lot of noise. And then she comes in one time, and it says, a stranger really might have concluded from this that Gregor had been lying in wait for her and wanted to bite her. From this, he realized that his appearance was still constantly intolerable to her and must remain intolerable in the future. So he knows that she is disgusted by his appearance, and he tries to not upset her. In the first 2 weeks, his parents could not bring themselves to visit him, and then the mother starts to feel guilty. And she says, let me go to Gregor. He's my unlucky son. Don't you understand? I have to go to him. So she still considers him human and her son, and she needs to visit him. So the sister takes charge. The sister turns into the parent, or the mother at least. So she will help her out, and she will bring her into Gregor's room. Now, Gregor has realized that he likes to crawl on the walls and the ceiling because he's an insect. So that's what he does for fun because he's isolated in his room, and he realizes that he can crawl on the ceiling, and he enjoys being up there because it's a different vantage point. So they have an idea that he needs more room to crawl around. So Greta and the mother, for a couple of pages, have this moving project, and they take all of his furniture out of his room, which it seems like it's a nice thing, but it's also part of the dehumanization because he has no human furniture. You don't need a writing desk or a bed or a bureau with clothes in it if you are an insect. So he's losing more of his humanity. Don't miss that. But there's one key item that's not up for negotiation as far as being moved out. It's very interesting. All right, so at the same time, he's glad that they're moving and they're making all of this space for him. It says, I think it would be best if we tried to keep the room exactly in the condition it was in before, so that when Gregor returns to us, this is the mom speaking, he finds everything unchanged and can forget the intervening time all the more easily. He's going through a phase. So let's just leave his stuff here, and then when he's like back to normal, he's out of his phase, then, you know, things will be status quo. So he, at the same time as losing his humanity, he likes having space to move around because that's more of who he is now. So there's, as I said, a few pages about moving. So the mother and sister keep coming back and forth into his room, and Greta always makes sure that she comes in first so she knows where he is. But the mother comes back first one time. Unfortunately, it was his mother who came back into the room first. And she just stands there because she's shocked. And then she turns around and she goes right back out. So the two women, they're making a ton of noise. They're, you know, imagine like if you're moving furniture around and you make a lot of noise. An insect, think about a spider on a web. They have this incredible, like, you know, sensory perception. So loud noises are difficult for them to deal with. So they make so much noise that he's starting to kind of lose his mind because he just can't take it, and it's wearing him out. Okay, there's one thing you don't touch. You don't touch pictures on the wall. So think about in your room, if you have a specific poster or if you have something hanging up, nobody touches that. You take anything else, don't touch that. He saw hanging conspicuously on the wall, which was all otherwise already empty, the picture of the woman dressed in nothing but fur. It's kind of a sexy picture. You know, there's no, you know, secret about that. And he's like, that's, you know, he's a dude. He's in his early 20s, and there's this hot woman dressed in like fur coat, and that's it. And doesn't want them to touch that. At least this picture, which Gregor at the moment completely concealed, surely no one would take it away. So he goes and he covers the picture with his insect body. And Greta, now all bets are off. Now she's become his enemy. This is a great scene. I wish we could act this out in school. So she walks back in. She sees him on the wall, pressed against that picture. And he looks at her. Then her glance met Gregor's from the wall, and it's like a showdown. It's like two UFC fighters. The stare down. Greta's purpose was clear to Gregor. She wanted to bring his mother to a safe place and then chase him down from the wall. Well, let her just try. He squatted on his picture and did not hand it over. He would sooner spring into Greta's face. He's like, you're going to take this picture out of my dead, cold, lifeless insect hands. So Greta gets the mother to leave because it's on. Greta's words had immediately made the mother very uneasy. And the mother looks in the room and she caught sight of the enormous brown splotch on the flowered wallpaper. And before she became truly aware of what she was looking at, screamed out in a high-pitched, raw voice, "Oh God, oh God!" And then she faints. So she sees Gregor on the wall and she faints. She freaks out. And then his sister does this. "Gregor, you," cried out his sister with a raised fist and an urgent glare. Since his transformation, these were the first words which she had directed right at him. And now she's got the same anger and disgust as the father. She very much has turned into her father. Here comes fourth injury. Okay. This one is at the hands. It's an accident. It's at the hands of his sister. Now watch what happens to him. So he's got the injury on his side. He's got a couple of legs that are messed up. So the mother faints, and of course they have to go find her smelling salts to help her out. So Gregor comes out of his room to see what's going on, if he can help. A bottle fell. So she's in the medicine cabinet. She's got all these bottles to try and get her mother to come to. A bottle fell onto the floor and shattered because she turns around, Greta, and doesn't know that he's right there, and he frightens her and she drops the bottle and it breaks. A splinter of glass wounded Gregor in the face. Some corrosive medicine or other dripped over him. Now, without lingering any longer, Greta took as many small bottles as she could hold and ran with them into her mother. She runs into the mother's bedroom and slams the door shut in Gregor's face. Again, he's injured. He's got glass in his face, and he's got like a chemical burn. And they slammed the door, just like the father slammed the door when his side was bleeding after he shoved him in his room. At this point, he had nothing to do but wait, and overwhelmed with self-reproach and worry, he began to creep and crawl over everything. He's afraid that he hurt his mother. He's afraid that he's upset his sister, and he's got self-reproach. He's like, oh, why did I do this? I'm such a bad person. Look what I'm doing to my family. Father shows up, and he's like, what the hell is going on in this house? And Greta says, mother fainted, but she's getting better now. Gregor has broken loose. And the father says, I expected that. I always told you that, but you women don't want to listen. So the father, all of a sudden, he goes from being this lazy bum who's been sitting in a chair who can't work. Now, all of a sudden, he's Mr. You know what? I got to do something about this. So he's all full of energy and anger. And he does something. He does two things, and we're at the end of part 2 now. So he sees Gregor there, and he puts his hands on his hips, and he goes right up to him, and he lifts his foot. He raised his foot uncommonly high anyway, and Gregor was astonished at the gigantic size of the sole of his boot. He was going to crush him. So it was kind of a show, and now he's terrified of his father. Again, like Kafka was terrified of his father because he was such a strong presence and he had so much disgust and hatred for his son. So he wants to get back in his room. He tries to retreat to his room, but he can't get the door open. As he now staggered around in this way in order to gather all his energies for running, hardly keeping his eyes open and feeling so listless that he had no notion at all of any escape other than by running. At that moment, so he doesn't know what to do. He's trapped. He wants to get away from his father. He's afraid of his father. His father's going to hurt him. He wants to get back in his room. He just wants to just get away and get out of everybody's sight because he's so hated. At that moment, something or other thrown casually flew close down by and rolled in front of him. It was an apple. His father had decided to bombard him. So his father is chucking apples at him. A weakly thrown apple grazed Gregor's back but skidded off harmlessly. Here comes the next injury. It's an intentional one by the hands of his father. However, another thrown immediately after that one drove into Gregor's back really hard. Gregor wanted to drag himself off as if the unexpected and incredible pain would go away if he changed his position. The mother actually gets a spine here, believe it or not. So the father is just trying to kill him. He is trying to kill him with these apples. So there's one that pierces the exoskeleton of the insect, and now it's lodged. It's stuck in him. So the mother sees what's going on. She hurled herself onto his father and throwing her arms around him as her hands reached to the back of his father's head, and she begged him to spare Gregor's life. So we know he was trying to kill his son. All right, that's the end of part 2. Again, the family's getting worse. There's one more part left, and that's going to be due on Monday. Things go from bad to worse, as you can pretty much imagine. So again, please continue on with the questions. Yeah, that's it. Take care.